Public hearing, ordinance number 2015-04. City Attorney?
Ordinance number 2015-04 of the City Commission of Lakeport, Florida, amending Chapter 23 of the Code of Ordinances by amending Article 1, Division 2, Section 23.1-12, definitions. Article 2, Division 1, Section 23.2-36, providing for rezonings of land and future land use map, FLUM. Article 3, Division 1, Section 23.3-6, use table. Article 3, Division 6, Section 23.3-25, mixed use plan development. Article 4, Section 23.4-10, providing for off-street parking. Article 4, Section 23.4-4, fences, walls, and gates. Article 4, Section 23.4-13, townhouses. Article 4, Section 23.4-18, portable storage units. Providing for regulations regarding portable storage units. Article 5, supplemental regulations. Section 23.51, parens I, those parens non-conforming signs, amending Section 23.5-4, historic preservation, Section 23.5-4S, penalties. Article 6, Section 23.6-8, providing for sea turtle protection, providing for appeal of laws in conflict, providing for severability, providing for clarification, and providing for an effective date.
Can you repeat that?
Please.
I didn't catch that? I'm sorry. Thank you. So moved. Second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Waters?
For the record, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. Mayor and Commissioners, we're bringing forward to you our second round of land development regulation amendments. We're doing this on a semi-annual basis as we identify things that are lacking or things that need to be addressed. We bring forward a series of changes that go before the Planning and Zoning Board and the Historic Resource Preservation Board, both of which have reviewed the proposed changes at hearings in the past 3 weeks. The Planning Board voted unanimously to bring it forward, and the Preservation Board had 2 dissenting votes, and the rest of the board did vote to bring it forward. There were some comments and concerns about how little time they had, and we'll go ahead and apologize for some of the things that are backups on the web. They're a little hard to read. Even though there are a lot of changes, it's fairly easy to go through these. The first portion is dealing with a number of definitions and clarifications that address issues in the furtherance of trying to resolve a lawsuit in the Pineapple project, of which you've been working on for quite some time. Under the administrative section dealing with permits, we did not have a very clear process under which to rezone land and also make changes to the future land use map. We have incorporated and provided that process as part of the LDRs. It's something that was kind of overlooked originally. We've made significant changes in clarifying the use table to make it consistent on how we treat assembly uses. There were some discrepancies between one assembly use versus another one. And working with our legal staff, we were apprised that under Florida statute, and that all of those had to be dealt with in the same way. So they've all been made consistent in the use table. There are a couple of clarifications on the uses themselves. As we go through this, the use table is very long because assembly type uses do appear in a number of different sections. We've also created the ability in certain zoning districts to do a mixed-use urban plan district. Right now, plan development has to be 5 acres. In some of our discussions with potential investors in the city, there was an interest in doing a smaller type plan development in our urban areas east of 95. So this plan district opportunity would be available to downtown zoning, mixed-use Dixie Highway, and mixed-use east. To remind you of how that process works, the overall site plan can be approved by either one of the boards, depending on whether it's in the historic district or not, but the overall governing ordinance would come before you and be approved by 2 hearings. It does allow some flexibility in how the LDRs are implemented and put forth in the development, but it can't be in conflict with a comprehensive plan. That always rules. And what it would allow maybe someone to do a greater setback than what we've required or a less setback. They can't do additional density that's not in the comp plan. They can't do additional height. And we think it might be an interesting way to creatively approve something. One good example that we would probably encourage to utilize this aspect is the Gulfstream Hotel, which has sort of an odd, one part of the parcel was heavily developed, one side of it is completely empty. How do you unify that all together? That might be a good example of how the plan development of this nature could be utilized. We had made a reference in initiating the LDRs back in 2013 that we would allow the on-street parking that is associated right next to a property to be counted toward their off-street parking requirement. So to clarify that in Article 4. We've had a number of residents wanting to do entrance gates, trellises, pergolas, and arbors at their entrances. As the code is written now, they can't exceed 4 feet or 6 feet because it's in the front setback. We did think it was appropriate to have a number of examples historically of a larger type element at the front of the property for entrance, and then the side fences are a normal 4 feet height. With Lucente, as you are aware, we did have a portion of the code that we had left out. What we had intended on townhouses is to ensure that the fronts of townhouses could not face alleys when they abutted a residential area, such as the properties that allow townhouses on Federal Highway, the alley between those properties on the east and west, and the single family next door. We did not want to see the fronts or the entrances to those townhouses facing that alley. But we would be okay with it in other areas of the city where it's commercial next to commercial or higher density next to higher density. So we clarified that in Article 4. Portable storage units. This is a whole new section. We have had a barrage of complaints about where you can put a portable storage unit, how long can it be there, what can it be used for. So we've incorporated in the LDRs, Land Development Regulations, a provision that regulates how you get those, what kind of permitting you require, how long they can be there, and their overall size. That will hopefully address quite a number of concerns that have been raised by a number of the neighborhood associations that are east of Dixie Highway. In Article 5, supplemental regulations, there's a small change to deal with another lawsuit in relationship to non-conforming signs, since it's going to bring forward a resolution to our billboard lawsuit. That's been incorporated here. The city attorney's office has worked with us for about 6 months to clarify the criminal, civil, and other penalties related to doing work without a certificate of appropriateness, and what happens if people do work that's outside of their approval or possibly undertake things without an approval at all. So that has been clarified, and it brings it into sort of harmony and compliance with other similar historic preservation penalties and provisions in other areas in South Florida. The last section is the Sea Turtle Protection Code and our environmental regulations in Article 6. As you may recall, some of you, we are regulated by the sea turtle provisions of both the county and also the state DEP. With that said, other communities such as the town of Palm Beach and other areas have their own sea turtle protection regulations, and so we propose to bring those in with Lake Works, so we'll be sort of the master of our own destiny. This is not watering down the requirements of the Department of Environmental Protection. We can't make it less stringent. We could make it equal to or more stringent. This basically runs the line of being equal to the Department of Environmental Protection. One reason why it's coming forward is there has been a great deal of liability concerns raised about the light levels at the beach. We don't have a switch where we can turn them up during off season and we can turn them down during turtle season. The lower parking lot, which is not visible from the beach, has no way to increase the lighting. We've had a very large number of complaints, some issues with trips and falls due to the lighting level. This would allow us to modify the sea turtle improved lighting at the beach and light up better the lower parking lot, and then provide a mechanism to provide additional lighting on top of the dune when it is not turtle season. Someone mentioned in the non-agenda item comments the dark sky provision. We're still working on that. I was hoping to bring that forward in tandem with the sea turtle protection, but it got very involved with the types of fixtures that can be used, possibly a expiration period by which people have to come in compliance, which may be kind of expensive. Most of our municipal lighting and security lighting is not dark sky compliant. So I would like to take a little bit more time and see how we can amortize that into effect. It'll probably be included in another round of LDR updates, probably coming before you either in December or January. That's a brief synopsis of what we're proposing. If you've got questions, I will try to answer those.
Commission questions. Commissioner Amoroso? Real quick, on the, Mike, you might have to answer this. On Siemens, are they looking at the lights at the beach? As far as, no, so they're not, so anything that we do as far as upgrading the lights at the beach to be dark sky, we would have to take on ourselves. It's not included in the Siemens project?
Well, I think if any lights in the city come close to matching dark sky requirements would be the ones at the beach. What we're working on Siemens with under the dark sky sort of outline guidelines is all the street lighting throughout
Yeah.
the whole city that we control. It's just not formalized in the code.
Okay, but if we do identify lights that need to be addressed at the beach, it would be our expense.
Right,
So the code
and
follows.
the turtle lighting for the most part meets all the intents and purposes of dark sky. What we're concerned with is that imposing a new regulation on new development or new lighting, because the dark sky ordinance would cover all properties, not just street lights and not public security lights, but if they've got a new shopping center of some sort that would come in or wanted to retrofit their lighting, we would like to see them go the dark sky route.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Meyer?
Hello.
Hi.
I have several points this evening. Let's start with sea turtles because we're on that already. Certainly at face value, I appreciate any ordinance that would perpetuate the existence of the sea turtle. For those of you that don't know, years ago I worked for a private surveying company as a sea turtle monitor, recording statistical information about the nesting of sea turtles on our beaches. I notice in here some of the language in C3, all outdoor lighting and exterior lighting shall be directed downward and shielded if they are visible from the beach. My concern there, and this ties into lighting in general, is that down lighting is old theory in terms of dark sky. It's no longer just about downlighting, it is about the intensity and the hue of the lighting. Now, if I could explain very briefly the science of a sea turtle or of a baby sea turtle, their eyes are located directly on the sides of their heads. Now, many of us know that sea turtles, baby sea turtles, are trying to find the water based on the moonlight. However, what they are seeing is not in fact the moon because of the location of their eyes. What they see is the reflection of the moon's light on the ocean. My concern here is that as we move forward into a lighting plan, if we ultimately create allowances, even if they create down lighting, even if they create shielded lighting, if we increase the amount of light that comes from the bottom of the dune, now, if we change the lighting in the city, the lighting also stands to become more intense. So what you get there is reflected light. Now, if you're a baby sea turtle, you see intensely reflected light from one side and from the other. So downlighting is no longer sufficient. Why can't we add language in here in this, and I would hope as we move forward into a lighting plan for the city at large, add something about intensity and hue, particularly if we are writing specifically about the sea turtles, because as we have moved forward in science, that's what we're talking about now, not downlighting.
We could add that, however, keep in mind that our regulation cannot be in competition or in conflict with the Department of Environmental Protection. They have to have that permit. They have all those specifications of intensity and hue. We went through this with the orange range of the lighting that's out at the beach now. DEP would have to review any change in our lighting. I don't disagree with you. Some of the specifications and sophisticated nature of the review of doing the intensity review, I would like to stick on the state because they have people that actually specialize in reviewing those applications, and we would follow their recommendation. One thing we've been trying to do is incorporate and rely on best management practices and other regulatory agencies that already have the rules in place, because I'm never going to be able to have the staff who are going to be able to read that on their own I'm not saying they're not right, it's just that that is a sophisticated sort of specialized area, and we would prefer to rely on the state to give us direction on the intensity, the hue, and how those light fixtures are actually installed.
Okay. I've got a couple of more points, if you don't mind. And I would like to continue that conversation. I don't want to slow things down, but it raises the question, why create this in the first place? If there is some superior document, then what's the point?
Well, the point right now is that we don't actually review our own turtle review. It goes to the county. And the county's review was much more extensive and laborious and held up the project at the beach quite a while. And I believe, and I think that many people in the city also are the feeling that, home rule is better and that we should be the masters of our own destiny. And so this would allow us to do that, and we can process changes there much more quickly and efficiently, especially if there is some decision to do some type of investment at the beach in furtherance of building out the second floor, which I know that Mr. Amoroso was on the review committee. They voiced that the beach area is very dark at night, and a new business on the second floor would likely want to be open at nighttime, so we need to figure out how to facilitate that. And so this is part, we're trying to get ahead of the curve for once, a little bit.
Yes. If we could move to the section Exhibit J, 2A, referring to a civil penalty may be assessed by the Historic Resources Preservation Board after notice to the owner and a hearing in accordance with section Q2 of this article. I believe it was the last commission meeting, both Commissioner McFoy and I raised concerns about the process for appointing board members and wondering if it is the way to achieve the most balanced board possible. I'm wondering how many of the other boards that are part of the voluntary advisory board system have the ability to instate financial punishments.
None.
None. Okay. And this is a change, correct? This is new.
It's, well, only the part that is underlined is changing. We did have civil penalties. It was not very clear on how they were instituted, and so we wanted to provide clarification. The city attorney's office did recommend that in certain cases we would traditionally kick it to the special matter code compliance process, but that wasn't really spelled out. And so this would, it is in line with most other preservation ordinances. Our process wasn't as clear as it should be, and there still has to be substantial competent evidence and some other things provided before the board can assess something. And also coming to terms of what that penalty would be. And we felt that working with the city attorney's office, this did make it much more clear on how that process would work.
Okay. I have some concern there, but we can discuss that in another time. Just very lastly, give me one moment. And yes, please, for the next time that we have this hearing, you mentioned that some of this information here is slightly hard to read. I would have to add that it is completely illegible, both online and in here in the backup.
Something's wrong with the table. I don't know why they printed it out the way they did, but.
Now I'm looking at Exhibit B, and I left this for last because I had the most to say here. Did some research on an ugly phrase that exists in your industry, which is spot zoning. And I understand that you will say that what we are discussing here is planned development and not spot zoning. So I looked up the difference between planned development and spot zoning, and if I can put it into layman's terms, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the difference is that if you are making a zoning change for a specific area, that it is not spot zoning as long as the change follows the spirit, if you will, of the comprehensive plan. What does make something spot zoning is if it does not follow the spirit of the comprehensive plan. And what we have here is a rezoning, and we are also changing the FLUM, the future land use map, which, as I understand, is the comprehensive plan. So we are both changing zoning and comprehensive plan in one fell swoop. And I guess I'm having difficulty understanding, why is this not spot zoning?
Okay, it doesn't necessarily both have to happen at the same time. Under our future land use map, we have some areas, let's get an example, the transportation-oriented development east future land use district includes some parcels that are artisanal industrial zoning and possibly mixed use East Dixie Highway. So if somebody were to assemble some properties and wanted to be one zoning classification, they could come in and request that all of it be zoned one thing or another. We do have the process under the comp plan, if it is found to be substantially in compliance with the comp plan, that you could make a future land use change by making possibly a future land use area a little bigger than what it was. What we did under the LDRs, we significantly shrank some of the multifamily districts and made the single-family residential areas bigger. We consequently changed a little bit of the future land use map. There may be a desire at some point in the future to have more multifamily available in the city, because right now it's just 2 blocks worth off of each side of downtown. There is a process, it has to be found in compliance with the state, there has to be substantial evidence given. There's a number of thresholds you have to meet before you can actually change your comprehensive plan to allow a rezoning where some area might become a little bigger. And the whole spot zoning has a whole separate set of regulations. We just couldn't go and decide, oh, we're going to put multifamily future land use designation in the middle of Bryant Park neighborhood and zone part of that multifamily 30. That would never be allowed.
Who makes the determination that this zoning change can happen?
It would be either a recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board if it's an area that's not in the historic district. It would be a recommendation of the Historic Resource Preservation Board. If it were in a historic area, it might be both if it was combined. The ultimate decision would be the City Commission. It will be done through an ordinance. If it includes the future land use map and comprehensive plan, there are probably, I think there's 3 ordinances altogether that have to be done and 6 public hearings. It also is reviewed by the state and other regional entities to ensure that it's in compliance with other entities' comprehensive plans.
This is just for my own enlightenment, and I'm still sort of feeling my way through the process, but if a vote of 3 on the commission can change the zoning plan, why have those regulations to begin with?
We're required by state law to have a comprehensive plan, growth management strategies, a zoning map, a future land use map.
Sure, I understand that it's the requirement, but if we then pass legislation that basically says that that doesn't mean anything, then I get that it's a regulation, but it's a regulation for a reason, because the state does not want us to be able to do that.
Well, under the equal protection of the Florida statute, we have to provide a mechanism for an applicant to be able to request a zoning change. Our code lacked that ability. We would be sort of floundering around if someone did come in and request a rezoning their property. This again is going to be coming up with the Gulf Stream because it's got multiple zoning districts. And they're probably going to come in and would like to have a unified zoning classification. We are going to have to rezone some portion of that property more than likely, because you can't have a single entity parcel with more than one zoning classification. So we wanted to make sure the process was legally sufficient, defensible, and actually was appropriate for our land development code.
Can I add to that? 9J5, when it was passed by the state back in the mid-'80s, that created the comprehensive plan process, was to get at the issue of cities rezoning big swaths of land and changing things willy-nilly without taking into consideration all the infrastructure requirements, the school impacts, and all the things that that would normally come into planning. So that's where that whole process comes from. It's a tool to force you to plan comprehensively everything and not just willy-nilly say, oh, let's throw a multifamily district in here without figuring out the consequences of that. And so maybe that helps you a little better as far as understanding why the comp plan process exists. It is a law, it can be changed. It's allowed to be changed, but its intent was to force you to understand all the implications of those changes if you decide to do that. Does that make sense?
My question was rhetorical, but I appreciate it.
Okay, well, sometimes, I mean, I'm a history nut, so I go back to 1985, so.
Commissioner Russo? Commissioner McQueen?
Yeah, and I have a lot of concerns with this item on the agenda, so bear with me, because it won't be quick. Commissioner Meyer has raised some of them. Some of them sounded like similar concerns that I would have. I think I'll try to answer Commissioner Meyer's question, why do we have this stuff? And I think, in my opinion, part of the reason that you have it is that Florida is a place in the country and in the world that is always under a lot of development pressure. People like moving to Florida, especially if they're in the middle of winter in the Northeast or elsewhere. And someone thought that it's a reasonable thing for communities to be able to say, look, we want our community to be a certain way. We live here and we'd like it to be a certain way, and so we're going to try to write that down. And we've had some of these discussions in past years that we supported the idea, and I think it's one that William, you've put forth, is that we want to have clear comp plans, land use map, all the LDRs, the whole 9 yards, the package. It's not all that easy to work your way through as a layperson, but that send a clear message to developers that this is what we would like in our community. And that way a developer says, well, I want to build something that this community obviously doesn't want, so I'm not going to waste everybody's time doing that, but I am interested in building something that they do want, so let's go forward with that. And we've had discussions about how we should try to make these things consistent. We've had a good deal of discussion in past years here that the community has spoken through voting about the issue of heights. It concerns me that this ordinance is better than 30 pages long. And some of it is pretty significant. It says that you can do a mixed-use, planned-use development, and it really ought to be 5 acres, but you can shrink that to 0.5 acres. And actually, if you go to one of the boards, you can shrink it even smaller than that. And then if you look a little closer at what the rules are, yeah, I can find it for you. I made a table of all this stuff at one point, trying to sort it out. It's page 97, line 409. But if you want to look, if anybody else wants to look. And the rules under such a planned use development, mixed use planned use, start basically saying that whatever else we write in our LDRs, under this one, basically in layman's terms, all bets are off. You can change the rules. You can shorten up your setback. You can mess with some of the other requirements. And now you've created a window that says this thing can be any size.